Good evening, everyone. I'm Frank Camacho.
And I'm Kurt Davis.
And welcome to the 48th, this final show of 2014. And as the year ends, it's time to kind of look back and kind of reflect on the winners and losers of this past year. And I think, if I can start it, the first winner are the Dreamers, the Arizona Dreamers. They've won in court several times, and they should be able to get their driver's license legally pretty soon.
Okay, Frank, and Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah, by the way.
Same to you.
I have Doug Ducey, Mark Brnovich, David Gowan, the Arizona Cardinals.
Are these the winners or the losers?
These are winners.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
The ALS Bucket Challenge.
Yeah.
Probably one of the biggest surges in the new communications marketplace. Kirsten Sinema is cementing her role as the leading Arizona Democrat. And I have China for maintaining most favored nation status, even though they violate patents, attack U.S. business and government sites, and are destroying Hong Kong.
And
we don't do anything about it.
You got to put the San Francisco Giants in there as well.
They
won the World Series.
Put the San Francisco Giants in the winners list.
Three out of five. That's all I got to say about that.
Who are your losers?
Okay, the losers would be Joe Arpaio. It's been a bad year for Joe. Kathy Herod. It's been a difficult year for her. The Arizona Democratic Party, the Arizona Dems, took a very big defeat in November.
Didn't win much, huh?
The Arizona State Legislature, they've got $1 billion deficit they're looking at. They've got some education, some public school funding they got to pay, and they're claiming that they have no money to do that. But yet, we still have a lot of tax cuts out there hanging out there that's not generating any revenue.
You'll have to talk about predictions. I actually think the Arizona Legislature is going to have a stellar session.
Oh, you think so?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we'll get into that in just a
Along with
bit.
our new governor.
Okay,
my losers are the American people. The Obama administration becoming by far the worst administration in U.S. history.
Okay, what about, let's see, Richard Nixon, George Bush?
He has succeeded in trampling on our constitutional rights via executive fiat. His failure to deal with IRS.
Budget surplus, and then
276 Nigerian girls who've been left to die after we were sending in troops to do something
internal
about
spying.
Let's go on. Watching Putin rebuild the Soviet Union. I mean, this guy has become a complete mockery to the presidency, and it can't get over quick enough.
What about his decision on Cuba? Are you going to be critical of that?
We're going to talk about that, right?
Yeah, we are. Well, one more loser, a couple of more losers that I want to include. Jan Brewer. I think, she spent a couple of $1 million fighting a case that should not have been fought in the courts, especially with the fact that the state is facing such a deficit. She goes and she pushes this thing. It's like, we're talking about the Dreamers, it's as if she is just, what's her motivation? It's a vindictive, hateful action.
As chief executive for the state, one of her responsibilities is defend Arizona's Constitution. Our Constitution is under assault from the federal government. A governor should and has to defend the state's rights that exist under numerous amendments to our Constitution.
So that's a difficult phrase.
Why?
That states' rights, that has a lot of connotations to it.
Are we fearful of the 10th Amendment?
It's not the 10th Amendment, it's how it's being used. I mean, what does she do here? She makes to punish a bunch of kids just because...
It's a broader issue than that, Frank.
No, it's not.
It goes to the very basis of a state being able to enforce its laws, to a state being able to know who...
For a state to punish 20,000 kids?
That's part of a much larger issue.
No, it's not. The issue is the Dreamers. Can they get
it's not. It's more than the
license?
Dreamers. It has to do with protecting the state's ability to have a rule of law in a state. When we became a state, we didn't forego our rights as Arizona. We don't live for benevolent dictatorship in Washington, D.C. Any governor, Democrat or Republican,
dictatorship?
Any governor, if a state says we're no longer going to defend our rights as a state, we might as well just become.
Let's be pragmatic about it.
Let's wipe out state boundaries and just become one giant nation that no longer respects what our constitutionally designed country, our country is, which is 50 states that have the majority of authority and power invested in them, not in a U.S. government.
let's be pragmatic. You're going to spend $2 million, at least $2 million, which we don't have, to fight an issue that ought not to be fought.
Any fight to protect our state's authority
How
is worth it.
How are we protecting the state's authority when we deny 20,000 kids the
Because
ability
there
to get
are
a
much
driver's license?
larger constitutional.
No, let's forget that. But right now, how
the
is that?
the state could authorize that if the state chose to, but the state has to protect its ability to make that decision. You want to have an argument about whether it should make that decision or not. I believe that should be an argument that occurs in Arizona with our legislature and our
I
executive.
think they argued that in court, did they not?
That's what exactly.
And the
that's what
courts
this is
found that
about.
was in our favor.
Absolutely.
Why
It doesn't
keep
mean
going,
that
though?
you don't because
All the way to the Supreme Court?
absolutely. There are things of value here that are much larger than that specific issue. You and I would agree on driver's licenses if it were done by Arizona legislature and the Arizona
Well, the
executive.
governor is supposed to lead, right?
And that's
Why
what she was
didn't
doing.
she? Okay, there comes a point. Arizonans, we don't have the money to fight this in court. It's 20,000 kids who want to contribute to the society, so we're going to go ahead at this particular point and let them do it.
If you're a state and you aren't willing to defend that state's authority, then you might as well just shut down your entire state government.
You know what?
Turn it over to the federal government.
Fine, let's hide behind the shroud of, states' rights. Oh my God, the sky is falling. I mean,
No, I'm hiding behind the shroud of the Constitution.
no.
I think that document's
a lot
more
of
important.
folks use that though, just to trample on people.
And other folks use it when they don't care about the state's authority and no longer have acquiesced to a growing centralized government.
Speaking of government, we'll have a couple of the leaders of the new state legislature in for a discussion on what we can expect in 2015 from the Arizona State Legislature. Man,
Always fun with you, Frank.
Oh yeah, it's a blast. Stay with us. And welcome back to the 48th. We're joined now by the part of the new leadership team at the Arizona State Legislature, Dr. Eric Meyer, who is the newly elected minority leader for the Democratic Caucus in the State House, and Representative David Livingston, who's the majority whip for the majority, the Republicans in the House. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
and
us.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy Hanukkah.
Got a heck of a job ahead of you with this budget deficit. With the new administration and new people in leadership positions. Let's talk about, first of all, how are things going to work now? You were mentioning, Representative Livingston, that you wanted to get to know everybody. There's going to be a relationship change and all.
I think the first thing that we're going to have to deal with is we have a brand new House leadership. We have new members in the Senate leadership, and obviously a brand new governor and a leadership there. So I'm very proud of the leadership team we've put together. I think it's a very conservative Republican team. The House and the Senate are working very well together. We've had a lot of meetings behind the scenes.
Is that just the majority or both?
I think both, but mostly the majority.
Okay.
The majority sets the agenda, and we enforce the agenda through the thing. And we've been meeting with the governor's staff and talking about the budget, because once we get the relationships built, the budget's the biggest thing we have to fix during the year.
And I think there are a lot of unknowns. New governor, new leadership in the House. But what we do know, at least in the Democratic caucus, is we're back with 24 strong. We didn't lose any seats. And the moderate Republicans that we worked with in the last 2 years to pass important things for the state, including the Medicaid expansion and protecting education funding to some degree, will be back. So our caucus is ready to work and to fight for the things that we feel are important to all Arizonans. Education funding, restoring dollars to our classrooms, and creating jobs in our state.
So I probably have a tough question for you, which is it'd be good to hear from both of you. What are the top two things in the budget that you believe should be protected, and what are two things in the budget that you think we could probably alter and change as we deal with the deficit?
Yeah, this may surprise you, but I think the budget deficit is so bad, I would say everything's on the table. I don't think there's anything that we can protect on the table at all. I think the proper thing to do, and if you use common business sense, you look at everything and you look at get as much savings as you can from as many different places at the same time. And I think that's going to be our approach on the Republican side.
So you're thinking across the board cuts?
I think you could see maybe a 5% across the board cut, but that's not enough. That won't balance the budget. So I think if we had a 5% across the board cut, there was also other segments of the budget that we would have to have deeper than that to balance
Increased
it.
revenue,
I don't think so.
i.e. taxes?
Not income taxes. Maybe some fees here and there, some cleanup stuff to make balance. Different parts of the government fee structure similar. I could see some of that, but raising revenue, increasing taxes is not the way to economic growth. It makes economic growth more difficult. It hurts businesses. It hurts individuals. So we're trying to grow this economy.
Well, I think across-the-board cuts would be devastating. I mean, we've had 6 years of policies from the Republicans that have gutted our schools. We've made the largest cuts of any state in the country to our schools. We have some of the largest class sizes, the highest dropout rate. If we want our economy to recover, which it hasn't under these policies, we're still lagging the nation. We have unemployment that's higher than most states in the country. We have full percentage points above the national average. We need to focus on educating our kids. The courts have said we can't make further cuts to education. If we were to cut health care, we lose the Medicaid expansion. That digs the hole
courts
deeper.
said, though, the courts have so far said we're talking about a particular line of funding. We're not talking
That's correct.
about
The inflation
all
funding.
lines of funding.
That's correct.
Now,
But
when
even
if you believe that education funding is sacrosanct, do you believe there's any areas of education? Some of us will look at and say we actually have some out of control spending related to redundancies in districts, those kinds. Do you leave any of those things on the table as an option to examine?
Oh, absolutely. Efficiencies are, we look at efficiencies all the time, and whether that's in education funding through the Department of Revenue, all those things.
The legislature has the authority to change districts.
Ask that. We delegate that authority to school districts, and right now we have the authority to consolidate districts if we think there would be substantial savings.
Do you think the legislature will consider that?
Well, we
I know
haven't
that
in the
local
past.
control, local control is a big issue.
And this is just me speaking, I'm not speaking for my caucus now. If I were to do that, you'd have to have a plan and fund it. So you have discrepancies in districts across the state where you, for years, have allowed school boards to set different policies. So in order to make those changes, you'd have to come up with some incentives up front to make the changes for those, but you would generate long-term savings. But I don't think it's going to get you $1 billion.
Not $1 billion, but
start?
you said if everything's on the table.
Yeah, I think Dr. Meyer and I agree on a lot of this. I think to reform education is very important. I think if we had more unified districts, if we had fewer districts, if we had less superintendents, less administration costs, that would enable us to pay our teachers more. But I don't think you force school districts to unify and go together. I think what is better to do is, like Dr. Meyer was saying, is give them a carrot. A business buys another business because it's advantageous to it. So we need to give districts incentives to consolidate together. And if that's maintaining a level of funding, maybe giving them a little more for a couple of years, but we have to have administration cuts to get as part of that incentive.
Okay, we'll continue this conversation on what's facing the state legislature in the year 2015 when the 48th continues. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the 48th. We're fortunate today to have Majority Whip David Livingston and Minority Leader for the Democrats in the House, Dr. Meyer. Thanks for joining us. And we're talking about taxes and budget.
That's right.
Always.
That's all you're going to be talking about. Yeah.
Representative Livingston, you mentioned that everything is on the table. What about some of the tax, well, let me back up. Have we received what was promised to us from all the tax cuts that we've been providing to businesses over the past several years?
So before I got into the House, we passed a couple laws when we were cutting to reduce corporate income taxes and do it, I think, over 7 years.
And tax incentives?
Tax cuts mostly, income tax, corporate income taxes. and I believe we're starting the second year of that. So we're just starting to see the results of that. And I think the biggest thing it does for us, it enables us to go after businesses, especially in California, and say the doors are open here. We want you to move to Arizona. We want the companies to move in Arizona. We want to bring jobs in Arizona. And we want to keep our existing businesses here in Arizona. We don't want them lose those businesses to other states or other countries.
Dr. Meyer?
I would say we haven't gotten the desired effect from those tax cuts. At the time they were passed, it was going to be $538 million in cuts when they were fully phased in 2018. Our economy hasn't recovered, as I mentioned earlier. It's recovered more slowly than the rest of the country. We haven't regained the jobs we lost in the recession. I think we've regained about 56% of those jobs. Our median incomes for the average Arizonan is below where it was in 2008. And the tax cuts weren't focused. They were just broad-based corporate tax cuts that go to a corporation and then out to their shareholders across the country, and they aren't spent here in Arizona to create jobs. So I would argue they haven't worked, and there's no evidence that they've worked. We have passed some policies. The job training policies in that bill were good policies. And I think when we had targeted tax cuts at specific industries that we know create high-paying, high-wage jobs in Arizona, we get a bang for our buck. And I think those investments would be wise investments in the future of our tax dollars.
So is it time to revisit and maybe make some modifications?
Well, I agree with Representative Livingston that everything should be on the table. We're looking to find $1 billion over the course of the next 3 years if we postpone those tax cuts from becoming policy. We could save about $100 million of that $1 billion, and we could use that to hire teachers right here in Arizona in our classrooms, reduce class sizes, and prepare our kids for college and the workforce. So it should be on the table.
So I'm going to ask you. We're going to play King of the Day for a moment here, and I'm not going to leave this one alone. I'd like to hear if you are the king, each of you. So you'll be king one day and you'll be king another day. Is what program or policy would you change if you could just decide? What program would you get rid of or change in state government?
I think one of the things I would like to see is more school choice still. I think Arizona is leading the country in school choice. I think if you look at, there's a report that came out last year, we have 3 of the top high schools in the whole country, and they're all charter schools. So we need to expand charter schools, we need to expand school choice, and I think that would help educate. We just need to give more incentives to allow parents to choose where their kids go to school.
What kind of incentive would you?
I would love to go all the way to vouchers. We're not there yet, but I think we'll get there. I think within 10 years or less, the state will be 100% vouchers.
More charter schools and at the expense of public school?
Well, some of the public schools are opening up charter schools because they're having so
Charter
much
schools
success.
are
Our public schools.
Right.
But I mean, but for
But the
public
reason-
education though.
Yes, for public education, because
funding.
But a lot of the charter schools are significantly outperforming public schools. Some public school districts are
that
very
just
good,
isn't
but
true.
not all of them.
That just isn't true, that they're outperforming. And you can use Basis. Scottsdale's one of the schools. They have a 56% dropout rate of the kids that start, only they graduate about 20 kids. If you compare their scores, and Chaparral's right down the street, it's one of our
There's a
district
difference
schools.
of dropping out and changing high schools
Well, they go
and
to
dropping out of school
Chaparral or
altogether.
Desert
And there's a
Mountain
lot of
and they
reasons, but I
graduate.
want to also get back to
Yeah,
your
to the-
king for the day. What program are you going to eliminate or change?
I would eliminate a program that would also help us solve our budget problem. So I get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The tax credits for private schools. We're spending right now about $108 million going to private schools with no accountability. 10% of that swept off to who knows where. And we don't know what we're getting for those dollars. For $108 million, I could restore full-day kindergarten to all the Title I schools in our state and make sure kids are ready to read by 3rd grade, and or help balance the budget. that program on the corporate side is expanding at an exponential rate, so it increases 20% every year. So every 3.6 years, you see those dollars double, and it's just draining money right out of the general
So
fund.
is there a Meyer bill folder open on the?
Well, it's been in it's been in our budget before, and absolutely, I like to see openness and transparency when it comes to how those dollars are spent. We're talking a big chunk of cash. I mean, you said we need to kind of figure out all the little things that will add up to $1 billion to balance the budget. That would be one of those things that I'd get rid of immediately to help balance our budget.
I think realistically, the opposite will happen. We will be expanding tax credits, ESAs, STOs, and giving parents the control of the kids. I think the parents choosing is the best control that we can have, period. There's no one better.
Parents already have total choice. There's open enrollment. You can go to any school you want. What these programs do is give the wealthy the ability to leave the private schools with taxpayer dollars and drive their kid over to a school with a $15,000 tuition at taxpayer expense.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it at that because we are out of time. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us. You have a big task ahead of you, and we wish you the very best.
And we look
Thank you.
forward
all
to
of
having
us.
you come back later in a
Be
second.
happy
See how,
to.
see how it's
Don't
going.
sit right by each other.
We're good friends, and we'll continue that way.
Okay, thank
right.
you very much.
Absolutely.
We'll
Thank
be
you.
right back. We'd like to again thank Eric Meyer and David Livingston for being with us. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we will continue our discussion on the 2015 Arizona legislative session on the 3rd of January with Senator Katie Hobbs and Representative Justin Olson.
And Frank, we also get to figure out all the bad predictions you're going to make for the
Oh,
new year.
yeah, right. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.